There you go. That's our website. Oh, actually, that just reminded me there was one more slide I meant to put in real quick.
Well, we are live now. So hello to everyone who has joined us. I'm very excited to have Daniel here with Seaworthy Collective. If you could share a little bit about Seaworthy Collective and what inspired you to get involved and what the mission is, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So my company is Seaworthy Collective. We're a startup community and venture studio for regenerative ocean and climate impact solutions. And then as far as how we got started, I was going to say I have a formal presentation if you'd like me to share. I don't know if you want to do more Q&A.
That would be great. That would be great.
Yeah, so I was going to say I'd rather save you guys the spoilers. Give me 1 second to share my screen here, and I'll kick things off. 1 moment. Share screen. Okay. You can see my screen okay, Hannah? Oop. Can you see my screen? Make sure. Hold on. Okay. I think so. It looks very okay. So I'm just going to jump in. Hannah, feel free to interrupt me if you guys have any questions or anything. But yeah, so as I mentioned, we're a blue tech startup community and venture studio, empowering current and aspiring entrepreneurs in regenerative ocean and climate impact. And I always love to start with our why, which is the fact that, we all have shared passions for the betterment of our ocean and planet. And for me, that actually started back in 2012 when James Cameron did the dive to the Marianas Trench. I was actually a freshman at the University of Florida getting my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. And it both highlighted to me how both little we knew about the ocean as well as what a technical challenge it is to do ocean exploration. And then beyond that, most recently, Victor Vescovo went to the Marianas Trench as well and actually discovered a plastic bag, which also highlights just how few corners of the planet haven't been touched by humanity. And so for me, this passion is something that I think when we take a bigger picture view at it, a lot of people have passions for the oceans, but we need to understand that those passions actually are something that, is one of the few things that societal limitations and things can't control, right? It's, it goes beyond geographic boundaries, disciplines and degrees, socioeconomic status, ethnic and cultural background, gender identities, sexual orientation, political preferences. Nothing can, no one or no social pressure can tell you or limit you on what your passion is. So for me, getting into the field, I really was just determined to pursue this passion for ocean science and exploration. And really, as I'll go through my story here, you guys will hear how I experienced some of these barriers and why Seaworthy is here to really help us bring those down and make this field more inclusive. So for me, my background, again, is in mechanical engineering. I got my bachelor's back at UF. And during my undergrad, I became a University Innovation Fellow, which are students in innovation and entrepreneurship from all over the world. Get to spend a week at Stanford and Google and really immerse ourselves in design and systems thinking. And so when I was in undergrad, I got to intern at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, which is a world famous oceanographic research institution. If you don't know them, they found the Titanic. And there I got to do underwater vehicle design and hydrodynamic simulation work, which basically fancy way of saying unmanned submarines. And after I graduated, I became a pilot and test engineer for underwater robots at Bluefin Robotics up in Boston, picture to the right there. And really those two experiences initially, validated my passion doing work that was really about the end impact for ocean exploration and ocean science. However, 6 months into working at Bluefin, they got bought out by a defense contractor called General Dynamics. And so as a native South Floridian, I said I could work out and sell out and work for a defense contractor or deal with winter, but I couldn't do both. So I moved to San Diego, where I spent the last 3 years actually as a contractor for the Navy doing more mechanical engineering work there. All that being said, I always wanted to get back to doing that work I was passionate about. So I came back to South Florida, actually July of last year, to get my master's here at University of Miami in ocean exploration science, which I'm graduating with next month. And more importantly, launching Seaworthy, which we launched September of last year. And so getting back to that whole barriers to your passion piece, this is really what my experience led me to realize, I should say. First off, I saw how little public funding there was for ocean science and innovation, and the fact that I couldn't even get hired back after my internship working at Woods Hole. And so then getting into industry, I mentioned Bluefin getting bought out by a defense contractor while I worked there. But even more starkly, working for the Navy the last 3 years, I saw folks from another leading oceanographic research institution in San Diego literally in and out of my lab on a regular basis. And it just really highlighted how deeply intertwined these interests are in developing the solutions that are supposed to be taking on these big problems like overfishing, plastic pollution, climate change, sea level rise, just to name a few. And so then getting into academia the last year, I've also seen how few people truly think outside this box of public sector academia, and basically thinking that they're either going to go on to further research and not actually have this passion for doing innovation and entrepreneurship to actually really develop the solutions we need to solve these big problems. And so I said, how can we start to develop this pathway for people to actually do this impactful work and do what they're passionate about? And so the opportunity that we saw here in South Florida is the fact that our blue economy, our ocean economy, is built differently. We're the one corner of the country where these entrenched interests in defense and fossil fuels don't have a footing. And that's really the opportunity that we saw for going beyond sustainability to actually solve problems regeneratively and not just mitigate them. So just to dive a little deeper, really when we think about sustainability, it's actually the bare minimum of what we should be aspiring for. Net zero means we've stopped the bleed, right? It doesn't mean things are all better. It means that it stopped getting worse. And so when we think about how we're actually going to start solving these problems, that means actually going beyond sustainability and really thinking about things like, instead of recycling plastic, actually coming up with alternatives to get them out of the supply chain. Instead of sustainably fishing from wild-caught fish populations when 90% of fish stocks are exploited, overexploited, or depleted, we talk about creating aquaculture or plant-based food sources, right, that replace seafood. And so these are the kinds of things that actually enable us to really fix these problems and not just mitigate them or put a Band-Aid on them. And so for Seaworthy, we launched as the first blue tech startup community and venture studio in the United States. And what that means is bringing together social impact with economic impact to drive ocean and climate impact. So we're able to cover 11 of the sustainable development goals, mainly resulting in the SDG 14, which is life below water benefits, as well as climate action benefits. And what the whole point of this is to say is that we actually are able to build and empower a community and then activate them to actually start building startups. And so what that looks like is starting with our foundation, the Seaworthy Foundation, actually working to make ocean innovation accessible, inclusive, and interdisciplinary by providing people access to experts in our network with monthly panel events that we've had. And then with that community that we build, we have a venture studio that allows us to co-create startups, literally building teams from scratch to start a startup with us, as well as grow existing ones that are, again, doing this regenerative ocean and climate impact. And so altogether, what we're able to accomplish is catalyzing traction and collaboration by providing people access to the network that we built, our community, which anyone can join, and the capital of our investing partners with over $1 billion under management. And so overall, as we start thinking about today with I know the things that you guys are working on in the hackathon, where these areas of opportunity are, really it's about building systems of solutions and really economies. And so what that looks like for us, we have our 6 verticals that we call our opportunities for sea change that individually have great potential for impact, but as collective systems really magnifies that. So when you pair something like an aquaculture fish farm with a seaweed farm, you're actually offsetting the waste of that fish farm, sequestering carbon dioxide to reverse climate change, even sequestering the nutrients that cause fish kills here in Biscayne Bay. Then you can make that a closed system with a coast resilient mangrove forest or reef regeneration project, or even a seawall that builds coastal resilience, then monitor that ecosystem with a sensor network that could be powered by ocean energy, and even have a plastic pollution detection and removal business to keep that ecosystem and those products pristine. So instead of building one-off solutions, the whole point is to say that all these things are actually meant to happen together and not in silos, and build systems of solutions that create local regenerative blue economies. And so for us, that all, again, starts with community building, right? It starts with making this field accessible, bringing people in, activating that potential with our opportunities for sea change, then actually getting to connect them with all the resources and build startups through a venture studio. And finally, we have our startup showcase, which we had last month, where we demonstrate all of their progress and actually show the overall pipeline of startups that we can build here in Miami and far beyond. And so our audacious goal is to grow and develop over 3,000 co-created and existing regenerative ocean and climate impact ventures by the end of 2030. And in doing so, as I mentioned, we just wrapped up our first cohort featuring 10 different startups, including 2 that we co-created. And the point is to say that anyone can actually jump in and build a startup with us. And that application right now is open. It's on our website, which we'll link momentarily. But overall, to tie it all together, really for us, we see this future of ocean innovation and entrepreneurship as something that is collaborative, inclusive, accessible, diverse, interdisciplinary, even embraces failure as a tool and democratizes opportunities, but more than anything else is collective. And to tie in a little into blockchain and crypto, I know I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm actually very bullish on it as far as the application of building systems outside of a lot of the current systems that exist. When we think about tokenizing impact, which is really something I'm passionate about, to say that we can actually create tangible value for things that have tangible benefit to society, right? Creating a sustainable business around ocean plastics, for example, right? No, there's no way we're going to make going out, renting a boat or operating a boat, picking up plastic, and we're not going to be able to recycle it and sell it for the same price as it takes to develop it from scratch, right? It's much more efficient still to go through oil and the things that aren't sustainable. So the point is to say we need to subsidize that impact. And I believe that tokens and crypto and blockchain can actually help create that, and decentralized finance can basically help will this collective need for these innovations to actually solve these big problems. So with that, I'm really excited about what you all can do here, and excited to see ways that we can all continue to collaborate. I have all of our information here for you guys to be able to reach out, and really just appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more about our vision with you, and hope you're a little bit more inspired to pursue the SDGs moving forward. Thank you, guys.
Amazing. That was incredible. You are single-handedly changing the world and helping others do it with you, and providing that opportunity to people who are super passionate like myself. I'm very passionate about saving the oceans. If I could just swim in it until it was saved, I don't know. But that's where I'm at. So hearing all that's so exciting. And I would love to hear like a little bit about like, say, what does someone need in order to approach you and build a startup with your team? What would those tools that I would need prior?
Yeah. So, well, first and foremost, it's the passion, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? I think a lot of people, and getting back to some of those barriers I mentioned, a lot of people get discouraged thinking you need a PhD to innovate or marine science degree to be in the space. But at the end of the day, these are businesses, and businesses are interdisciplinary, right? And so I would say it's that combination of passion, fearlessness, and resourcefulness. More than anything else. So it's not a specific thing. I mean, obviously every business is going to need a science person, right? But that's where everyone gets hung up on. They think everyone needs to be science people to be in this space, but you don't, right? I need a CFO as much as the next guy, right? We all need finance. We all need legal. We all need, operations. And the whole point is to say, like, it's people betting on themselves to say, hey, I can learn this. We can help surround them with the resources. They just have to have that resourcefulness and motivation to do it. So I would say it's not one thing, and especially because there's so many different facets. But the point is to say just that being able to take that step back and realize this is a job just like any other job. And just because it's a lot bigger problem doesn't mean that you need any bigger qualifications.
Right. Just thicker skin in this case.
Exactly. But that's part of innovation and entrepreneurship in general. You need to be able to tolerate failure and actually embrace it as part of the process.
Right. And along your way in that light, what are some of the failures that have really propelled you, that you've learned, that unexpected hurdles?
Well, I mean, I get back to that experience.
General dynamics, which I hear is in the solar space. Is that part of their...
I was in a subsidiary of them, so I can't speak to GD, but I will say, for me, the failure was in seeing, I think, 2 things. Number one, a lot of people get complacent, and it's easy to get complacent, especially working for the Navy, and the benefits are nice, and it's very hard to screw yourself out of the job. But the whole point is to say that, if you value impact, you can't be complacent. You can't not be serving that. And so I think it's, in my mind, I always get hung up on these systemic failures, and I was a victim of the systemic failures previously to actually have the opportunity to do the work in the first place. But on the more granular level, when it comes to starting a startup, there's always going to be there's always failures. And it's a question of like you actually having, again, that thick skin to say, is it that big of a deal, right? Like for us, I mean, just figuring out our concept. I didn't even know what a venture studio was this time last year, but it's learning, right? Like what actually is going to help you find that unique avenue or that pathway that really aligns your passion and your mission, right? And so for me, it was saying, how do we make this field accessible to people? And Venture Studio literally says anyone can co-create a startup with us. That hit the nail on the head of what I wanted to do, and we're really one of the first ones doing Oceans and Venture Studio together.
And a what studio was that?
Venture Studio. So Venture Studio is similar to like incubators and accelerators. Mm-hmm.
What's the name of your venture studio?
So Seaworthy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And right now, how many startups are you working with?
So we just finished our first cohort. So we had 10 startups. We co-created 2 and we helped 8. It was actually 50-50 of domestic and international, covering things from seaweed for reversing climate change to 3D printing seawalls to applications of AI for natural disasters and aquaculture to actually growing aquaculture. We had a sea cucumber farmer to, really just, creating data, which is a big problem for the ocean. We do not have enough data out there. So, all these different pieces that, again, actually all work together.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the notable wins in those projects? What can we be grateful for you saving for us?
Well, so we had one startup that we actually helped raise over 125 grand. It's called Thalasso. They're actually a Norwegian and Mexican startup helping to develop a solution for taking on sargassum, which, if you don't know, is the seaweed that actually is invasive and washing up on our beaches. And so they're actually creating both a boat to take it out of the water and then a processing facility to actually create it into products. So we helped them a lot. They're actually trying to get hopefully a hub here in Miami. We helped a Brazilian startup called Supremo develop. They have their AI for natural disasters. And so we helped them partner with Paddle, who's a local paddleboard startup, who put sensors on their paddleboards to actually create a place to take that data and turn it into meaningful insights. We helped another startup who's local here, Edition Company, who actually launched a crowdfunding campaign and, more importantly, has 2 different pilot opportunities coming together for their 3D printed seawalls. And then we had 2 co-created startups as a couple other great examples. One that is doing seaweed as well, and then another that is actually doing these modular sensor packages for creating ESG data, which, if you guys aren't familiar with ESG, it's environmental, social, and governance, basically impact investment data. And so all that to be said, that's only half the cohort, but it's really just about the fact that these solutions all were able to actually bounce off each other. For example, Supremo and Edition Company were working together. The 2 different seaweed startups we have are working with Thalasso, the first startup I talked about. So it's really cool to see all these dots connect, because a lot of other programs like incubators and accelerators are usually very focused in one vertical, right? They only want to do one thing. It's just seaweed. It's just aquaculture, right? And so for us, it's to say it's actually about what happens between all these startups that actually helps build them up better.
Yeah, diversity and perspective is and passion. That's the perfect recipe for innovation and creation and saving the world. So, so thank you so much. I'm curious too. What is the next year going to look like for you guys? What kind of people are you looking to join you, or what kind of companies are you looking to sponsor?
Yeah, so we actually just kicked off our first raise. We're raising $1 million by early next year. And the goal is to basically fund A, bringing on more of my team full time, B, be able to actually launch more programs. So we're going to have our next cohort is going to launch in March. And applications are again open now at seaworthycollective.com/SeaChange, SEA, Sea Change. And then beyond that, next year, one of the things we're really excited about is launching a fellowship. So our nonprofit, which is the Seaworthy Foundation, which we launched last month, we're actually going to be launching a fellowship where that is going to hit a lot more people. For co-founding a startup, we can only do that with we co-found about 2 startups a cohort, so we only can work with between 6 and 8 people on doing that. But at the same time, this fellowship is really targeted toward getting individuals in the loop. And so we want to have a fellowship of hopefully up to 50 people where we're really just giving them all of the resources and access to connections to help them really be inspired to then co-found a startup with us and have all the resources to feel like they can actually take the lead. I think we've already done a good job of just with our panel events, but even being more intentional, especially in underserved populations and people who may not have ever had the opportunity to get into this field otherwise.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Your company is so important in this world.
Thank you.
And it seems like you have been, at least in the space, long enough to know a lot of the big players. So who are some of those connections and people that your network can provide to anyone who's curious?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, if you go on the network part of our website, again, seaworthycollective.com, you'll find, all the folks in our network. Really, the goal for us is to say, we're making people in our network accessible primarily through the panel events. But really, it's more importantly just making this field a known quantity for people. So I like to point people toward resources a lot. So actually on our blog, we've done quite a bit of resource and ecosystem mapping. So you can go ahead and check that out. It's the news tab of our website. But, really when I think about just, when we talk about the big players in the field, I mean, part of it is there hasn't been this field here, right? And it's a very new field. And really for us, we're seeing, I would say Norway and Scandinavia has had the biggest influence, I would say, on the ocean economy and ocean innovation.
Why is that?
Their government just really supportive. Their prime minister is literally like a major ocean champion. They launched, they launched a couple different initiatives. One's called the High Level Panel for Ocean Startups or something like that. But really, here in the States, I mean, again, things have mainly been revolved around Boston and San Diego because that's where the Navy influence was. And so it's interesting that here in South Florida, we have so much ocean around us, and everyone says, why wasn't this a thing before? And the point is to say it's because these interests that have had all the money, aren't here. But at the same time, that creates the opportunity for doing the actually impactful work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have any? I know Ben just joined us. Do you have any questions for Daniel? Or did you get to hear what he kind of started talking about the Seaworthy Collective and all that?
The big Ben.
I'll bring him in. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I kind of heard the tail end. I just hopped in a few minutes ago, but it sounds like you're doing something very innovative and exciting. So, I also live in Florida. I live in the Panhandle though, so I'm up in the northern part. But I heard you talking about oceans and the Navy influence, so I understand where you're coming from on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, especially I know in the Panhandle, there's the big Navy base up that way.
Yeah, we have NAS Pensacola, home of the Blue Angels here. So,
well, I think it is. It's one thing. Actually, a quick fun aside about the Navy's influence in ocean innovation. So this is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually like documented, declassified. The Titanic was actually a cover-up. Finding the Titanic was actually a cover-up, and it was Bob Ballard who led that expedition. It was actually funded by the Navy to find 2 sunken submarines, U.S. submarines. And they basically said, oh, well, we think the Titanic is nearby. So you guys find the submarines first, and then you can go find the Titanic. And they did both. And so it's just like a fascinating look into just how deeply intertwined these interests have been in the development of technology and ocean exploration. And even like the first person to go to the deepest part of the ocean was also a Navy expedition, So it's one of those things where, obviously it's been the, it's both helped push the boundary, but at the same time where we're at now, obviously we have much bigger problems we need to be solving in addition to defense problems. And so it's just a kind of double-edged sword, if you will.
Yeah, it definitely can be. Our oceans are a very sensitive ecosystem. There's tons of trouble with what's going on in the world right now. Our coral reefs are dying at a very rapid rate. My biggest thing that if I could help with, I think, is trash cleanup. There's a project that I have an idea for that I want to work on here locally. Because trash in the ocean that's a huge problem. So,
Mhm.
you know, that's where I would like to see more, you know, ocean innovation and those kind of things geared towards that, because um, I actually think that's probably the biggest problem with our oceans right now is the trash that's in them. You
Yeah.
know, there's that island that's the size of Texas out,
Mhm.
you know, there just that keeps gathering, and they can't even do much about that because it's actually the microplastics that are coming off of that that are extremely difficult to collect that are causing the biggest issues. You know, because as fish ingest those, and then we eat the fish, and it just trickles down through the entire ecosystem in that aspect as well. So I haven't looked much into your project, but I'm going to look you up on Twitter really quick and check into what you guys are doing. But yeah, I love everything that has to do with conserving our oceans, especially living, you know, there's a beach 15 minutes from me. So
Yeah,
I'm all,
they say that people consume a credit card's worth of plastic every year.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And yeah, I mean, and what's crazy is there's also a lot of that plastic is in the fish that people eat too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, but Ben, to your point, one of the things that I really get excited about, especially this community, for is to say that, okay, well, we want to clean up the beaches, right? First off, um, no one take this the wrong way, but beach cleanups essentially are kind of sabotaging efforts to actually make it profitable, right? Like if you can get free labor to do it, why is anyone actually going to pay to clean up beaches?
Mm-hmm.
But all that being said, one of the interesting pieces is to say that what if we can actually create, something like that actually can be translated of, hey, if you clean up X amount of pounds, this translates to X tokens that have, some tangible value in a crypto market, right? Like
Yeah.
these are the things that now we have the technology, right, to actually tokenize that impact and link the real world physical impact that you're making with a tangible value that didn't exist before. And, I think some people have already applied this to other causes. I mean, Dogecoin is my favorite example because it's just so ridiculous. But the point is to say, right, if something can have that value to you, why can't we start creating these mechanisms where we're actually incentivizing to do something about it? And better yet, then build businesses on top of it that can have lasting impact. So that's
Yeah,
one of the
absolutely.
challenges I put out to the universe and would love to have someone in our next cohort working on.
On that note, Daniel, if you could use this technology to solve any problem, what would it be?
I mean, well, first off, there's a lot of applications. So, I'm going to say a couple of things. I think I can't pick just one. So, first, and I've already actually seen someone working on this, it's transparency in fishing. There's a lot of illegal fishing, and, fishing is a very shady industry. Seaspiracy, I have some problems with, but if you haven't seen that, the
Where'd you go?
problems they highlight are well done. And so, it's really to me about that we can actually really understand where our food comes from, right? And where seafood comes from, and if it's actually sustainably fished, which I guarantee you the majority is not, vast majority. And, even actually illegal fishing where, you're seeing you're seeing fishing fleets going to the Galapagos and, raiding fisheries that are supposed to be protected, but no one can really enforce it. And so I think it's an amazing tool for that. I already sung praises about tokenizing impact. That's another major opportunity. And then really, I think more than anything else, it's actually the human side of this, where a lot of coastal communities, it's not just, in privileged areas like Miami, right? I mean, there are small island developing nations and places that I think are often, not as included. I mean, we just saw with the Glasgow Pact, aka COP26, where a lot of these smaller nations were left behind. And I do believe crypto and DAOs can actually be a tool that helps include them in these larger impact-driven efforts and rewarding them and giving them access to a global economy that they might be disconnected from otherwise. So a couple of different avenues there.
Yeah, those are all great avenues. And I must ask, I'm all for tokenizing impact. And if there is, any sort of project, obviously that you are looking for help on, I mean, you can always throw it in our community. I'm sure there are some ocean passion people in there.
I would love to help you with that, actually, so feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I'll post in the Discord. I shut down my Discord so I wouldn't have notifications going off during this. But yeah, that'd be awesome.
Follow-up question on your Seaspiracy. Well, actually, in general, do you happen to be a pescatarian or any of the? Are you like? Have you vegan?
I stopped eating fish over 3 years ago, or almost 4 years
there you
ago.
go.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I get back to, at the very least, right? People should know what they eat, where it's coming from, whatever. And, everyone's a hypocrite at some point. But, the point is to say that if you actually, understand, or if you value sustainability and take the time to educate yourself on the issue, I think it's very hard to feel aligned in those values and eat seafood with a healthy conscience.
And sleep at night.
The only seafood that I eat seafood a lot. I'm not even gonna lie. But the only seafood that I eat is I buy it from my local fish market. Who I know they're going out daily, catching it right out of the Gulf, and then you can see them cleaning the fish there in the market. And it's not coming from like a global, producer that's going out and fishing on a mass scale, and disrupting the ecosystem, or I go out and I catch it myself. Those are the only two ways that I'll consume fish. So, I think that's a little more sustainable, and I don't see too much of an issue if you do it on a local level like that, but the overfishing, and I know it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's more prevalent in like Asian cultures where they're overfishing the oceans a lot, just due to partly due to the population, but I think that's a real problem. And then I know they recently just made it like legal again to where people can go out and hunt whales in that area too, which is, to me, just extremely heartening, disheartening.
And they've actually recently, there was a study that came out that actually quantified whales' carbon impact or carbon footprint, and the fact that like they're actually a major carbon sink too. So killing whales directly links to global climate change. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's, I don't. So the thing I don't like about Seaspiracy is basically they counter a scientific problem with a moral and ethical solution. I'm not a preachy vegan. I'm very scientific in why I do what I do. But, I do think at the very least, like truly understanding and, just like you mentioned, knowing your local fishermen, right? Just because you know them, like understand, okay, where do you fish? Is this actually a fish that that is endangered or not? Should I be eating it, right? One of the biggest problems, and actually something that's already evidencing how past sustainable the oceans are, is tuna. A third of the time that you eat tuna is not even tuna; it's just other red fish meat that's marketed as tuna, and you don't even know it.
Right.
So there's a lot of this mislabeling of fish purposely, and well, purposely and not purposely, from the source they don't even know it's marketed. But yeah, just to be said that like having that at least like, hey, I know like tuna is something that I probably shouldn't be having because it's so critically overfished, right? But people love to eat it anyway. It's an interesting piece of aligning values, and I'm never going to say it's a 0 or 100 thing. Everyone does their own, but I do think, especially as we are evolving as a society and culture, like to be able to have all the resources around us to make better decisions, because at the end of the day, it's all at our fingertips, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
So I love to say like people make informed decisions about everything, but food, when it comes to food, it's like on another planet, But we have that.
I think it's kind of conditional too, like if you are always worried about your next meal is going to be, you're going to be less likely to look into those kind of things. If you're a struggling person, like many people in the world are, they don't have the luxury to worry about that. So it's a very complex issue, that I think can be worked on from many angles. going back to trash, I kind of wanted to ask you one question that I did think of when we're talking about tokenizing efforts and things like that. So you mentioned how they would collect certain amounts of trash and then be awarded tokens for that. So what use cases or where do you see that trash going once it's been collected? Because that's another issue within itself, especially when we're talking about recycling, and especially here in America, where China used to buy, over 50% of our recycled goods as raw materials, and now they no longer do that.
Mhm.
So there's a statistic now that I think it's a pretty high percentage. It's well over 50, well over half of our recyclables just end up back in the landfill, anyways.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's kind of like we got to think even deeper than just cleaning up the oceans. It's like, okay, we cleaned it up, we got the trash. Now, what do we do next? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So basically, a couple things. So to your point, it's actually 90% of fish stocks are, or sorry, 90% of recycling. Same number, different is that. 90% of recycling doesn't end up recycled. Yeah, it's only 10% at that max that actually ends up getting recycled. I mean, first and foremost, the solution is getting plastic out of the supply chain altogether, right? So
Right.
we should be, and we're starting to see investments in things that actually, create plastic or bioplastic, right? From, I mean, in our case, seaweed, but it could be, any sort of biological material that actually, biodegrades. Um, but as a whole, I do see, and this is, I'm a mechanical engineer, so I look at it mechanistically to say, this is an opportunity that we have to, again, create basically the replacement for subsidies, because governments, that's another piece of this, is basically admitting that governments have largely failed on creating really um, valuable environmental legislation and
Right.
incentives. And so it's to
At
say,
least, especially here in America, right?
yeah,
Essentially, the foundation that the wheat that supports us to be able to support that back.
exactly. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's really the point of it. And that's kind of what I'm seeing about DAOs too. It's like, it's, hey, this is a community and everyone's willing to put up some money, right? Look at what we can actually invest in and support, right? To me, it's, I mean, the key thing, and what I think we're already seeing as Web3 is coming out, and more and more of these advanced tools are coming. Like, I mean, right now it's a lot of disparate networks, but I think we're seeing more and more synergistically people are aligning under certain umbrellas, and to be able to actually combine, if we could all actually combine efforts in each of these different areas that everyone cares about, all of a sudden the collective buying power or influence, financial influence, and overall influence that we have, could be a lot more effective than the influence we have in government, which these days, unfortunately, is not as effective as it should be.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I'm excited about. I mean, it is definitely still a bit theoretical, but I can see it happening.
Yeah, I think it's definitely plausible. I mean, you've already seen it in like the space industry, for example, where NASA took a step back from their space shuttle program, but now we have big privatized space industries that are going in and taking hold of that. So I think the same thing could be done for a lot of things when we're talking about DAOs and self-governing bodies, and kind of putting it back on us as a civilization, through our own organizations and private companies and efforts to clean up the oceans, and then make connections with the people that will utilize those raw resources, as well as make changes, how you said, move away from plastics. I think there needs to be some kind of innovation on um, how we can utilize what plastics we've already made and are continuing making. I did see recently that somewhere someone had developed a technology where they can take plastic and turn it into fuel, which
Mhm.
is, I thought, was really intriguing. So
Yeah.
I think as we see more things like that come along too, that'll help. Um, my idea for the trash is, I don't even care if someone steals it from me, because if you can do it, like, we should all be doing it. I'm gonna go locally to my beach and clean up trash and make physical artwork from it, from
Mhm.
certain pieces, and then create like NFT of that, and then whoever would buy the NFT, I send them the physical piece. So that's kind of my
That's awesome.
aspect. It's like, at least I know that it's being used in some case, and maybe someone will put it on their shelf rather than it, being buried in the ground somewhere.
Yeah. No, and I think what would be cool is really like if maybe it's like you can buy an NFT and there's even like a token too that, and I don't know that I know NFTs have value, token have value. I'm not sure if
Right.
it's too many pieces, but to say it's an appreciating value either way,
Yeah.
would be really powerful.
Yeah, that would be awesome to have like almost like a governance token, like a DAO, create a DAO through it, and say, okay, here's what we're going to do with the proceeds. Cause I would want it to be a charitable thing, like I wouldn't want to take any profits from that particular project, other than maybe some small overhead, the cost of me going out to the beach and picking up the trash or something.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, really, when we think about plastic, this is kind of a fun hot take, right? Plastic is what? It's another form of carbon, right? And so it's all carbon sequestration. And that is to say that we need to find ways, no matter what, recycling at some point is going, and hopefully soon, is going to be outdated in that we create things that, are actually beneficial or neutral if they end up in the environment, right?
Right.
And so it's to say that, we have created all of this plastic, and so we actually need to sequester it, basically. And so like people are thinking about putting it into building materials, right? And things that actually, just keep it from actually getting back into the environment. So art is another great way. And I think NFTs as a bridge to art and actually to broader communities is a brilliant way as well. Again, I think the applications, especially just connecting, the impact again, whether it's tokenizing and now NFT as well, I think is another great example too. Like, there are all these mechanisms that we've never connected to something that has historically been not a sustainable business, financially speaking, right? So to actually be that financial mechanism and catalyst for creating something that actually could make this maybe not profitable, but at least something that, you're not hemorrhaging financially for either.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think just on that note, I think that idea, really what you're saying too, having a DAO kind of lead the charge here. Maybe we're not going to get it from those big political investors. I think that all comes with sharing the message. So really, I just want to say I appreciate you guys so much for jumping on, because it's conversations like these that can really light the fire, light the spark that starts the fire among the community and get those ideas out there and, connect. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, and I'll say from our end, we are starting like literally in the last week, starting to explore building our own DAO. So if anyone is interested, feel free to reach out. Happy to get some help on that.
Beautiful. I have a question for you that's kind of out of left field. How do you feel about microorganisms like microbial digestion of plastic? And is that something that you guys have looked at?
So let's see. So, I mean, it gets to an interesting place where it's like, what's a terrestrial solution versus ocean solution? But obviously it's solving an ocean problem. I don't know too many people working on that. I mean, again, I think at the end of the day, microorganisms or whatever is a mechanism that enables us to sequester or turn it into something that isn't harmful is great. So I do know that is a emerging technology. It's funny how a lot of these technologies use air quotes because it's actually just nature-based solutions. And what we're seeing is basically we need to revert back to natural solutions, which was doing a hell of a lot better than we tried to out-design it and fail because, nature had a few million years on us. So it's really about how do we leverage nature to restore nature, right? And that is the regenerative approach, and that is exactly, what you're talking about. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think that's actually how they create the fuel from the plastics, is using a microorganism that consumes it, and then that microorganism's byproduct is that fuel. If I remember correctly, I could be completely off basis, but I'm pretty sure that's how they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I haven't gone too deep into it, but yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Okay. Well, there's endless ideas here. I mean, we could sit here and talk about how to save the ocean for hours.
Well, I mean, and I haven't even scratched the surface on the fintech side of this too. So,
let's hear a little bit about the fintech side.
Well, I mean, this is the open brainstorm. So this is like literally bringing people up to where we are now. So next year, we're hoping to launch a fund. And so basically, one of my mentors loves to say VC, venture capital, is inherently extractive, right? It's saying you need to prioritize profit for shareholders, right? And usually prioritizing profit means minimizing impact, right? It's very rare that they go together. And so it's to say, how do we actually, and this is actually getting back to why we're looking into DAOs, how do we create something that can actually be something that isn't extractive, fund startups, and be something that, can more involve the community and diverse stakeholders and not just people who already had a lot of money to put into startups. So that's my open-ended, my left field question. Go for it.
In your like eyes, what does that look like for you?
I mean, to me, it involves a DAO for sure. I think so. My friend Chris Daniels over at Shrimp Society is launching an NFT at the end of the month, but I don't think they have a DAO. But I think it's interesting what if the NFT can basically be people's right to buy into to pitch into the fund, and then that raises the fund collectively among however many NFTs we sell, and maybe we do like annually a number of NFTs that we sell, kind of like memberships. That's literally my first, that's the deepest I've thought about it. So
yeah, I mean, it's extremely doable. I'm big into blockchain technology, NFTs. You saw, we saw, I don't know how up to date you are, but ENS just airdropped governance tokens to every one of their people that had an ENS address, which is it's a Ethereum domain name essentially, and they airdropped. Then, you own that domain name almost as it's like an NFT. You own that on the blockchain, and so they were then able to use that as like a membership, like how you said, and dropped the tokens that they dropped. ENS are actually governance tokens that the community will use to make decisions on how that platform is going to move forward in the future. And then Decentraland, for example, is a metaverse that I play in a lot. When I bought my name, that allotted me 100 VP or voting power, so that I can go into the DAO and vote on proposals and things like that from the community. So, there's a lot of systems out there already that you can go and look at and kind of model, your vision off of that, are working really, really well already.
Yeah, no, I'd love to get some of those resources, because this is, to me, when we talk about, so on the other end of the spectrum, regenerative finance, right? It's something that needs to be inclusive and something that, again, isn't extractive. And so I think having this way where, people can buy in, and then the other piece is that, let's say the DAO makes an investment into a startup, right? That theoretically you're able to actually connect that back into, okay, X% of the ROI then goes back into the fund, or maybe into impact, right? Something that actually is more than just offsetting, but actually that's the regenerative piece, right? If offsetting is just literally doing as much bad as you are good, regenerative needs to say, okay, we need to basically not only already do good, but double down on that to create, additional impact. So if we're already facilitating the solution, making money on it, then going beyond that to actually say, okay, maybe that's going toward purchasing, carbon offsets, or even supporting our fellowship program that's actually doing the social impact piece of actually, helping to bring people into the space and have more diverse stakeholders helping spearhead these solutions. So things like that I think there's a lot of possibilities for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting.
Funding is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I don't have a background, but I'm seeing now how all of the mechanisms kind of come together, and really on the same time, especially COP26 has me a bit jaded, but expectedly so, where stakeholders get together and it's either a lot of posturing or only half of what you hope could get accomplished. And at the end of the day, the majority of people want to see these problems solved, and if the government isn't going to solve it, we're going to find the mechanisms to do that. And that's what I'm seeing this kind of evolving too.
Right. It's just about the tools are there. It's just about using them and not sitting on them and waiting for someone to fund it, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And that government essentially government, formal government is a outdated form of governance.
Centralized governments.
There you go. Hit the nail on the head, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah. Decentralization is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
On that note, so how do you see, obviously we want everyone to reach out to you when they have passion and an idea, and your info's here, and we'll keep it in the Discord and put it on, Instagram and all of our channels. But as far as what you're kind of looking for, like how can this community help you grow your message? Because really that's the main thing, is we want to share this message with as many people as possible. So how can we help you share?
Absolutely. Well, I'll say first off, one of the investors in one of our first startups was an NFT person. So I know that this community has a lot of interest in this space, especially I know obviously, crypto's gotten somewhat of a rap for, obviously the carbon footprints, but I do think that's a temporary problem. All in all, I would say number one is just, sharing the opportunity, right? The disruptive piece of what we've done, if you will, air quotes on disruptive, is just create an accessible opportunity for people to get into this space. So please, share the opportunity, let people know that, hey, if you ever wanted to get into ocean innovation, even if you never thought that you could do this kind of work, this is the opportunity, right? Like, Ben, you just came into our conversation today and already I'm like, hey, we could actually work together on something really meaningful and potentially impactful, right? Like, these are the kinds of things where we need to break down these silos and just say, like, look, passion.
Where are you located, Daniel?
I'm in Miami.
Miami.
Yeah.
I'll be in Miami in 2 weeks.
There we go. See? And so this is exactly what this is for. And this is just literally a symptom, Ben, of the kind of things that we do, where it's just about bringing people together. Right now, we don't have any events scheduled yet. We're just still coming back from our end of cohort event, which was our biggest event of the year, but we will be getting something out for next month. So at the very least, folks can follow us. It's at Seaworthy Global on Twitter or at Seaworthy Collective on any other channels. And we have a newsletter as well you can sign up for. But the biggest thing right now that we have that people can jump in on is our opportunities for sea change. So if you want to apply to build a startup with us or grow your existing startup, if you have one, it's seaworthycollective.com/sea change. And other than that, really, I encourage everybody to feel free to reach out. I'm finally, for the first time in a few months, having some bandwidth and feeling almost accessible. And, I do take pride in that. It's something that I think a lot of people, as things grow and grow, become less accessible. And I'm trying to do a better job of making sure I'm still here for people who want to be part of our community. So
I know that feeling.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is truly just that, having that knowledge of an accessible opportunity and knowing that, there isn't any sort of pushback or anything on that, and that you can actually get in on it. And that these communities are meant to cross-pollinate, right? We're all in tech, we all are passionate, and we all are finding avenues that we never even realized we could drive impact. So it's really exciting. And Ben, thank you for jumping in with me today. It's been awesome to already get these juices flowing on some of these awesome opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me up. And talking about it with me. I followed all of your socials as well, and was checking out the website. So, yeah, and like I said, I'll be in Miami in a few weeks. I definitely was gonna try and link up with the BitBasel team, and then I would love to meet up with you. I'll be down there for Art Basel and that whole art week. So
sweet. I'll be around for sure.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you so much, Ben, for jumping on. Thank you so much for Daniel sharing your expertise and your mission with the group, and you guys for connecting. It's exactly what we need and why we want to bring people together. So we wish that there were 20 of both of you to just multiply.
We need more Bens for sure.
Yes,
I don't know. My mom says one of me is enough, so.
I don't know. It seems like you both of you are great people. So I think we just need everyone to kind of. We don't need more of us. We just need more people to see this vision, I think.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Exactly. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, you guys. I appreciate you so much. And again, we can always connect in the Discord or reach back out, and we can continue the conversation anytime. If you guys want to hop back on again later this week, maybe we can do that. See if we create some more buzz and anyone else is interested in sharing ideas. So
yeah, let me know.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.
Have a great day, guys.
You too.
See ya.
Okay.